Can you give us a little bit of perspective and just kind of set the scene on how you got to know the band originally, and you know where you kind of met Joe and that whole kind of perspective?
Well, I first saw that I was working on the NME, and I first saw the Clash at the end of October 1976. They played in Fulham Town Hall,
Right.
and I'd heard they were really good. And there was a group called Rugulator topping the bill, who had a certain reputation. They had a couple of singles out on Stiff, and the Vibrators were on first, then the Clash, which just seemed this extraordinary explosion of colour and energy, and they were singing a song that I thought was called Why Riot. And then Rugulator came on, and it was like that was the end of their career.
All right, forget about it.
Forget about it. And then I went to see them. So I went to see them at on the White Riot tour at the Rainbow. And then I went up a couple of weeks later. They played St Albans Civic Hall, and that's where I kind of got to meet them first. And Joe and I nearly had a fight, because
Right.
Joe was kind of like Paul and Mick were around, and Joe was kind of like doing a Joe, you know, with a kind of special brew in his hand. Joe used to really drink a lot in those days. Well, he drank all the time actually, but he used to drink a lot in those days.
Right.
And had been doing self-made as well, and he's with the kind of, you know, Joe would always be surrounded by the kids talking about life,
Yeah.
answering questions, political questions. And I just went to say goodbye to him, and he muttered something about the Fourth Estate, waving his fist at me. And I wasn't actually affected at all. I did mention that to him later on. He said, "Oh no, I can't believe that. Oh no, no." Because those, as we've seen in this film, there's lots of contradictions in Joe. Thank you very much.
This at the time you were writing for NME, or this is
Yeah. And then I went round on. So that's like the middle of May, end of May, '77, and it's Jubilee Day, when the Pistols boat trip takes place.
Yeah.
But instead, I went round to Mick Jones's place to interview him for an American magazine. I was doing something. I wanted to write about them. So, and although I was writing for the NME, Tony Parsons had done a big piece probably a couple of months before, so it wasn't a place for it. Anyway, and I just kind of we just kind of like grew. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't an interview. We just kind of really got. I was there for hours. Paul Simonon and Glenn Matlock came round later on, and then I went to. Probably 6 weeks later, I went to the Bilson Festival, which was a big festival in Belgium, to do a piece about them for the NME.
Yeah.
And as I say, Joe was kind of difficult, you know, but then it was all kind of
On purpose.
But as he could be, you know, saying, and he's kind of like, and it's 4 o'clock in the morning, and everyone's stoned and a bit drunk, and he's giving Mick a hard time, funnily enough. Saying, I'd never tell people what you tell them, you know, keep it quiet. But Joe also, that was a fantastic show, because Joe, on stage, it was like one of those classic, sort of Belgium, because of its proximity to kind of other countries. It's got, you know, German, French, Dutch people, and there was a big thing of kind of anarcho hippies, you know, which basically seemed to consist of people smoking huge quantities of hash, basically. But they tried to. They had this kind of almost like concentration camp-like erection in front of the stage, which was kind of, you know, concrete posts and, you know, and barbed wire. They'd have had. I don't think it was razor wire then, but they'd have had it. And they're kind of trying to pull it down as the Clash are playing. Joe inevitably leaps down
It helps him out.
and trying to help them push it. It was kind of complete chaos, you know, and the stuff being thrown at the stage or at the security guards, everyone. Simonon got hit by, maybe it's a bottle or no, it's a lump of concrete on his shoulder. I remember seeing the enormous bruise. But anyway, I sort of got on with them after that. And we sort of became mates. And the thing about the Clash was, they were all, and I think that's sort of, it's mentioned in that really. The Clash are all, not only they're all really bright, really intelligent, and have kind of like a sort of slightly surreal view of life. But it's kind of like, people say, oh, it must have been fantastic, you know, all those political discussions. No, it was really good fun and really funny. They were just really funny in a kind of really kind of clever way.
Yeah.
So and we just sort of got on all the time, and you know,
And just grew your
yeah,
friendship all the way
yeah.
through then, yeah. Which became really good mates with Joe. Yeah.
and with Mick, I was with him on the other day.
You mentioned Glenn being in the same room from the Pistols. Was there a real rivalry there? Or it was just for the tabloids?
I don't think so. No, I never thought so. No, so it was no.
It was played up for the
Listen,
press.
there's two elements. The Clash really respected the Pistols, and I think the Pistols, you know, apart from Rotten would always be the problem. And I mean, the rest of the Pistols didn't really like Rotten either. But Rotten, you know, I'm slightly biased. I used to really like Rotten until he attacked me for disagreeing. In fact, at the video shoot for Medicine Show,
Right.
I got there and Mick and Don Letts said to me, "Chris, go and cool out John, would you?" I'd been in Jamaica with Rotten. I sort of
What
knew
year?
him, you
What
know.
year are we talking about?
This is 86.
Right.
85, 86. And no one told me that he's had, you know, about 15 cans of Red Stripe and, you know, about 10 grams of sulfate. And the first thing I see when I walk in, this isn't really a Clash story, but anyway, I walk in, the first thing I see is a long room, and Rotten drops his cigarette on the shag pile carpet, and his manager has to run from the other end of the room. I should have seen that as a bad sign, actually. And Top of the Pops was on. I was in a really good mood. I was like 100% positive. And he just sees slagging everything off. And I'm just saying, no, you're wrong. And I'm not saying, no, you're wrong. I'm saying you're wrong because of X, Y, and Z and making the point. And eventually he just gets up with a can of Red Stripe in his hand and smacks me around the head.
Oh.
And I leapt up and I thought, right, okay, I'll go for it here. And of course, naturally, his manager then sort of leaps in the way, as he's supposed to do. So anyway, that's a long story. So that's the Pistols. Yeah, the Pistols. They all really loved. They thought the Pistols were fantastic. The Clash thought the Pistols were fantastic, and I'm sure, apart from Rotten, the others all really liked the Clash. I'm sure.
Yeah. I'm just feeding back into Julian Temple was saying that there was this kind of thing going on where he could only work for one band or the other, and he had to stick with the Pistols. Like it's just that's what I kind of.
They might have pulled something like that.
Yeah.
But McLaren
More
might
for the
have
press.
McLaren might have pulled
Yeah.
something like that.
So, Bernie doesn't come off very well in the film at all. Is that how you see it as well, like, or he comes off very
It's a
Machiavelli?
complex kettle of fish, but
Yeah.
but everyone's sort of quite. The paradox here is Bernie is obviously a clearly very powerful person because everyone sort of likes him,
Somehow,
despite all
yeah.
this. Everyone
Yeah, yeah.
sort of likes him. I don't. Well, I do sort of understand the whole that he had on Joe. He's obviously a father figure and thing, etc., etc. But Bernie is very bright and is very interesting, and he's always, you know, it's always good company when you run into. But there's a good story,
Right.
even if it's bullshit,
Yeah.
which it frequently is. But it will be told in an entertaining way.
Keeps the story going.
So I mean, it's some years now since I said to Bernie, "So Bernie, what are you doing?" He said, "I'm waiting to make my move." He doesn't quite seem to have done it yet. Doesn't quite seem to have done it yet. And he did invent everything, of course.
So to some extent, he is a winner, as he says in the film.
Bernie would regard himself as a winner. Bernie would regard that as very flattering.
Fair enough. Because the film is a really good expose, like compared to like Don Letts' Red Stripe to World. It doesn't gloss over anything. It's kind of, you know, it's celebratory, but it's.
I think it's really good, you know.
But it kind of has a grim and.
Yeah, of course,
tinge
of
to
course,
it, like,
of
because
course.
the story is.
But there's a
pretty
sort of freshness and vitality about the way it's told.
Yeah,
you know?
no,
I mean, I
absolutely.
before I came up here, I was looking at a few reviews online, and they were all right, but they weren't. You know, I always thought the first time I remember seeing the first time I saw this, a much longer version actually. I just thought this is really okay.
Yeah.
This is really good.
By the way, Danny Garcia is from Spain, the director. He couldn't make it over, actually. We tried to hook up a Skype Q&A.
And he's an interesting guy because he was just
You know.
a fan, and he just went out on a limb and
absolutely.
and
It's a
doesn't
passion
own any of the
project.
rights to it anymore. You know, David Mingan, and I think actually because there's a lot of material which I'm sure you will realise is from Rude Boy, a lot of the live stuff, and not just the live stuff, some other stuff as well, incidental stuff. And I think a deal was done. I mean, basically he ran out of money.
Yeah, sure. So, you know, this is a whole part of the whole Punk London thing. You know, this is marketed as we're a partner within it. I'm just wondering what What's your take on all of
No,
this?
it's complete nonsense.
Sure.
Obviously.
But
No,
you're busy this year. There's plenty going on.
I'm not that busy. But I know, but I did, I mean, one of the things, this is part of the complexity of Joe. One of Joe's friends was Boris Johnson.
Right? Really?
They'd had, because Joe used to get the Telegraph.
Okay.
And Joe, living in the country, Jock Scott used to get the Telegraph as well for the racing. I'd like to mention something about Jock Scott before we forget as well, who passed away. It was his funeral the other week. And Joe, Boris, of course, was against getting rid of hunting.
Yeah.
And Joe, living in the country, agreed with him. So there are many paradoxes about Joe. And Joe started having a communication with him, first of all writing him letters. And then it got to the point where Joe was, because Boris was also editing The Spectator then, which occasionally ran poems.
This is the late 90s or when was this?
Yes, it'd be late 90s, early. It's late 90s. And Joe would so Joe started sending poems to Boris to hopefully for them to be included in The Spectator. They never were. But I interviewed Boris for my book. And Boris, of course, tells me that Sandinista is his favourite album ever.
Of course.
But he can't seem to distinguish between Paul Simonon and Mick Jones. And he also tells me how he loved punk because it was an expression of Thatcherite libertarian beliefs. I never used any of the in my book, anyway. But there are many paradoxes about Joe.
Which obviously makes him a really interesting character, to say the least. Yeah, I mean, the band has been incredibly influential. How do you, where do you see them? They've been obviously influenced the Libertines, White Stripes, Arctic Monkeys, and that. I mean, in terms of their legacy, how do you see them?
Oh no, the legacy is kind of built even more actually. The Clash are much bigger than they ever were, but I think it is as I think I said at the end of the film. It's there are great truths in their lyrics and in the music, and the intelligence of it. I think it's that's really and it touches your heart, touches your soul.
Absolutely. I mean, you can see.
I think that's what it is, and I think I think it will continue because kids seem to like the Clash.
Sure.
Teenagers.
No, absolutely. I mean, lyrically they were incredibly exciting. Apart from the music, whereas maybe the Pistols and the Damned are more exciting from a musical perspective.
Yeah. And there's also a significant body of work, which the Pistols obviously don't have. The Damned a bit.
Leading on to which, what do you make of Cut the Crop? Is it as bad as they say it is?
Yeah, no, it's terrible. This is England is very good, but it is it's staggeringly bad. I mean, I did try with it. Many times I sort of tried. Maybe I'm wrong. No, I'm right. It is terrible.
Right. How does that happen?
It's a disaster.
I'm not aware of it myself at all.
No, it's a disaster. It really was a disaster. And it was a great moment for me. Actually, I think I said it was in July. I think it's the beginning of August, 85, when I ran into Joe, and it's like, I couldn't really say it for him, but he says, I was with him in 192 for about, he said, meet at 9 o'clock. He was about 20 minutes late, talk about Mick Jones. But anyway, and we're talking about all sorts of things. And then about 10 to 12, he says, hang on a minute. I want to tell you something. I'll go and have a waz. I'll come back and tell you. He says, well, Mick was right about Bernie. Oh, bloody hell. Wow. Wow. Well, we could have told you that, actually. It was extraordinary.
But, I mean, Mick and Joe later on, as the years progressed,
it's a tribute, I think it's a tribute to Mick that he immediately forgave what had gone on, even though it caused him hell. Yeah. I mean, he's being sort of funny about it,
Sure.
But actually, it caused him great suffering and grief.
Sure, absolutely. Were you at the Acton Fire?
No, I wasn't.
You never made that?
No, I had to go somewhere else. Yeah. Unfortunately.
Sound like an incredible place to be. I'll just throw it over to the audience. Is there any questions for Chris about being there and the time?
You kind of alluded to it a little bit, but I just unifying it all?
I would say, I mean, I love, you know, the Pistols. I mean, kind of the one album really is fantastic. But I mean, I think it's the kind of longevity of the Clash, which, despite this film, I mean, did last for quite a long time, and that kind of there's a big catalogue of work. I mean, you know, there's just even London Calling and Sandinista is kind of 10 sides alone. You know, I mean, pretty enormous. And I think the kind of the divergence of material within those records is really pretty extraordinary. Whereas, kind of say, the Pistols, it's very kind of clear. I mean, I think the Pistols record is fantastic, but it's kind of very clear what it is and where it's coming from. But I think I like that experimental side of the Clash, and I like the dub side of it as well. And I think it just really stands up. So it just stands up extraordinarily well.
What's the story about Paul Simonon and Topper not being involved in the making of that, or not appearing in the film?
Oh, they just didn't want to. No, they didn't. No, they weren't interested.
And was Bernie Rhodes off?
Yeah,
He was.
yeah.
Because he's painted very badly in the film.
Yeah, he wouldn't have paid him, but he would have kind of.
And I know
I'm
he
sure if
probably
he'd been
was, but it'd be
interviewed,
quite
it would have been
interesting to hear
exactly
his
the
side of the story.
No, I'm sure it'd been exactly the same. No, because I talked to Bernie. I do like Bernie, you know, but this, you don't want to go into business with him. But I mean, for my joke book, he said, well, no, Joe had to have me back because he wanted to be me. I mean, I'm not going to argue with you here, Bernie. I'm going to put that in because it just says a lot about you. He's a little bloke. You know. One of the points, which is not really visually, you'd have to note this. When Bernie comes back for the second run with the Clash, he's had a whole sort of facial refit. He's had a nose job, and you know he's wearing those round John Lennon glasses. And he's got contact lenses, so Bernie has a new swagger about him, which no one really comments on, of course, because you know, he's come back as a different person, slick and sophisticated. He seems to see himself. As there's that shot near the end with him where they wearing the boater hat. So Bernie has an enormous ego.
It's almost like a cartoon villain.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But he's kind of entertaining. And the thing I'll always say about Bernie, to be honest, I never really felt Malcolm McLaren actually had a sense of humour. He might have had a dry, kind of a slightly bitter, sarcastic sense of humour. But Bernie does have a good sense of humour. He's actually very funny. He's very good company. Until he stabs him in the back.
I vaguely remember Topper Hedden being less of a character. I mean, that seems to be quite complimentary towards Topper Hedden. Memory has it that he just completely became so dependent on heroin that seemed to be slightly glossed over. It had a bit of a mild problem, that the rest of the band. But from what I remember, it was very, very bad.
Yeah, very bad.
Yeah. So that was not.
I mean, he
quite
was
true in that
busted.
story.
You know, when he was busted in England, when they're doing Sandinista. I think they're doing Sandinista or Combat Rock. Anyway, he's busted at Heathrow because the customs guy said, well, we saw your case went round about 3 times. You just stood there staring at it. He'd come back to get smack as well. He decided the smack in New York wasn't very good. Topper did have a big problem, but I think it was kind of like, I don't think it was very easy for him because he came into the group and there's those 3 guys who are very strong individuals and they already had something going and he has to fit in. And he's a bit of an outsider. You know, he's this parents were school teachers from Kent. And I think it's hard for him. I don't think it was easy for Topper. And also when you're the drummer, like in the studio, what are you going to do? Might as well do drugs. You don't have much to do. But yeah, he had a very bad. I think it was very bad.
That did seem to
I mean,
gloss
it's
over.
horrendous. What happened? Topper's like having, you know, Joe at one point. This is when they did just Hell West 10. Just after that, Joe discovers that Topper owes 30 grand to a heroin dealer and is going to have his legs broken otherwise if he doesn't get the money. And Joe goes to Midland Bank on Portobello Road and gets 30 grand out in cash and gives it to this guy Alex Chetwynd, who was a mate of his, who worked on Hell West 10, who's a film guy actually, and gets him to take it to the dealer so that Topper won't have his legs broken. And I don't think that's out of guilt or anything, you know what I mean? I think that's out of generous spirit. Yeah, and Topper car, you know, he's driving a minicab, smashed, I think it's his pancreas out, really bad stuff was going on for him.
And yet, sadly, it was Joe that died.
Yeah, exactly. Well, from an artery that should have run through his heart and run around it, and he could have got it any time. I mean, you see these very frenetic performances, you know, you're kind of not surprised in a way.
I don't question it. I just think it's a great piece of film because it actually says something about the Clash that we haven't really seen before. Now, I think the defining moments in the film are the beginning when Pearl Harbor says what makes them a great band, which is the drummer, frontman, great musician, and the artist. And then the other defining moment for me as well is, I don't know how many times I saw those guys. I'm the same age as you. And I remember seeing the Cut the Crap concerts, and I actually felt quite sorry for those blokes there. Part of their time there. And they're sort of victims of the whole story in a way, rather than anyone else.
Vince is kind of, as is quite apparent, I think he's quite damaged from the whole experience and still hasn't got over it. But you know, those shows that they did, they weren't bad.
They weren't.
They weren't awful.
Well, they were. Sorry, I'm not having that.
Okay. Okay, very good. You know they're terrible.
I thought they were absolutely dismal.
Well, the ones at Brixton.
Yeah.
Okay, I was kind of giving them the benefit of the doubt.
No, you're being generous.
Okay.
Anyway.
Any other questions?
I was going to say, the important thing about those Brixton shows, and they were very good, but I think we've got to remember also the politics of it, they were miners' benefits as well, you know, that's what they were doing it for as well. I mean, Joe always had that political edge to it, you know, that, you know, whatever his background was, you know, he's very different, but he did represent working people, and 70s Britain was a very tragic place.
Joe was politicised in his squatting days. I mean, that's when he kind of really got it, you know. And it was, Britain was awful. You're right, Britain was kind of awful then. People don't have no idea, have they really? But those show, but actually, let me. If I'm just saying, because I was talking about Jock Scott, who's in the film, and Jock Scott was kind of a guy who came down. Ian Jury found him in Edinburgh in 1978 and rescued him and brought him down here. And it was the best thing that Jock ever did was decide he was a poet because it justified everything basically. But I do remember seeing Jock, and I just want to tell this small story. Outside, when the Clash did the Combat Rock tour at Brixton, the Casbah tour, and I ran across Jock nearby, and he's wearing an old T-shirt, and he's got jacket sleeves, safety pins, the T-shirt, and he just looks at me and says, and if you remember what the Clash were wearing, he says, okay, so you've got sleeveless jackets, jacketless sleeves, jacketless sleeves, it's dub. Anyway, I went to tell that at his wake and I forgot. But he's just an example of kind of, there are always very interesting people around the Clash, and there's interesting people in that film, but yeah.
Absolutely. So, favourite Clash song?
Huh?
Your favourite Clash song?
Oh, that's fairly impossible. I mean, I don't know. I mean, right now I'd say White Man, because it's sort of an easy one probably, but there's zillions of them. They're all great.
Oh, absolutely.
They're all great.
I have to say, Magnificent Seven is a
Magnificent
classic.
is fantastic.
I mean, it's funky as hell, and it's all about the 9 to 5 grind. It's a great contradiction. Any final questions? Yeah?
If they had managed to hold it together and not lose, not sack Topper, not sack Mick, where do you think it could have gone musically?
I don't know, because it nearly came to back together a couple of times, you know. I don't know where it would have gone, but I'm just saying, in the early 90s, they were talks. You know, all three of them were together.
How close did they come?
I think they were I think there was a falling out. Mick wanted Gary Kerfurst to manage them, who was his Big Video Dynamite's manager, and Joe wanted someone else. I think that was part of the problem. And then just not long before Joe goes, they're sending songs to each other. So like 2001, there was stuff going on. And I don't know I've never heard the material. I have no idea what it was like. I thought what Joe was doing with the Mescaleros was pretty fantastic. I thought, I was expecting, because the third album, which was a posthumous record, but he was making that when he died, I thought, about the fourth or fifth album would suddenly go up, would really kind of be a big kind of Neil Young-sized kind of album, and that's what would happen to him. Obviously it didn't, but I thought the stuff he did was really good.
This is kind of the only film of the Clash that I've ever seen, or anything about the Clash, where they don't put Strummer on such a ridiculous pedestal, because he always gets kind of depicted like a godlike deity in a weird way, which never sits right with me. It's always, because that's not why I got into the band.
Yeah.
Do you think that that kind of representation from somebody who's written a book about the guy contradicts what he stood for, or allegedly stood for? Do you think that's kind of one of the many contradictions?
I'm sure it's one of the things that Joe really wanted, but also didn't want at all at the same time. Because that's kind of, I don't think they talk about, at the same time he was telling me about, that Mick was right about Bernie, he bought a nice house, it's not pretentious or anything, on Lancaster Road in Notting Hill. And he said, because Joe had to justify like this, well, it just reminded me of the places I used to squat in. But even better than that, he's then trying to sell it to buy a flat above Tesco's on Portobello Road. And I think, Joe, you don't really need to do, you don't have to, because he's just conflicted about his success. And the place wasn't flash, I assure you. So, yeah. Does that answer what you're asking me?
I will leave it at that. Listen, thanks a million.
Thank you. Thanks very
for
much.
coming.
Thanks.